Greetings, Mark Garang here, publisher of the Conway Daily Sun. And today my guest is Mark McConkey, who's a candidate for the state senate and a current state rep. Mark, good to see you.
Mark, thank you for the opportunity.
Good. You're a chair of the Public Works, right? So, and the people always say that first. Oh, Mark McConkey, roads, bridges. So, how specifically have you influenced what's with the roads and bridges that's helped us in the valley? And I guess the obvious thing is Route 16.
Sure. Thank you. Asphalt, concrete, bricks, and mortar, that's what we do in Public Works. The lifeblood to North Conway and all the towns before is Route 16. And I've had a hand in that reconstruction from Wakefield through Ossipee. We just finished a new section. And the next section, of course, will be Albany, which has a lot of safety issues. And 113, 171, 109, and all that beautiful pavement I enjoyed driving up on is welcomed, by the community.
So do you, I mean, I know we have the 10-year plan and all that, but as you as Public Works Chair, and I guess I'm trying to understand an insight, literally, how much influence do you have? I mean, and I'm loading the gun here to give you an opportunity to talk about what you've done, but it's like, oh, if you weren't there, or because you're there, now we have all this pavement, now we have this reconstruction, and if you weren't there, it would then go to over in Keene someplace or something. Right. How much influence do you actually have?
So when I first came 2002 to Concord, I wanted to be on this committee, and Gene Chandler was the Speaker of the House and a good friend. And Gene would always say, there's one thing when he put me on the committee, is that we need to keep as much money north as we can. So that was my charge from day one. And we are the fourth largest budget in the state between highways and the capital budget. And unlike the other committees that are policy driven, we actually have the opportunity to direct where those projects and when those projects start. So to that extent, I've had an awful lot of control over keeping money north, which was what Gene told me to do in the beginning. And I'm working now when I leave Public Works to make sure that we usher in some more North Country people that can take my charge and go forward. I mean, does it really work that way when you're in the committee and and you're the chair and you horse trade about a road over in western New Hampshire and the southern? Does it literally work that way? I mean, that you can direct it. Yeah, you have the blueprint done. Executive Council goes out and they have the hearings. And the hearings were after the planning commissions all had their say. And then the governor puts his stamp on what he would like to see, and then it lands in committee. And when it lands in committee, it's time then to fine tune where we're going. It's not saying we're going to build a brand new road and it's going to come in my district, but if the groundwork has been done, then the opportunity is there in the 10-year plan to juggle projects and where they go.
And that's where a chairman comes in.
That's when a chairman comes in.
And so on Route 16, and in fact, I just happened to drive it last weekend coming up from Boston, and it's in pretty good shape. I mean, all those sections, and everybody knows this, there was, every year there's like a couple of miles that are done. And now the only section, the road's in good shape. The through Albany that you just referenced, but it's dangerous. So, the other in the southern part, you can just see, oh, you widen the road, put better shoulders in, and all that. But that section right down here, there's a lot right next to the road. Cottages and motels and I guess I'm asking is, how's that going to change that section of the road, and when is it going to be done?
There's a section right now starting at the Tamworth line and running through Albany, and the project money that was given is not enough to do the entire section. So they've been working with the town of Albany, and I've been at every one of those meetings to identify which section should be done first until we get the rest of the funding. And safety is overwhelmingly the biggest issue through there.
Right.
We passed and put in the 10-year plan The residents don't like the speed coming through there, which, you know, if towns aren't paying for enough enforcement, and of course the state police will tell you they don't have enough money for enforcement. So we have a trigger now, an opportunity to slow that traffic down to a point. But unlike further south where you have so much right-of-way, there's very little right-of-way there. I always like to see a 4-foot shoulder put on for other movements, whether it be bicycle or whatever. So on top of that, so that's happening. That'll happen in the next, it's programmed in, and that'll happen in the next couple years.
So does that mean that the road, I mean, because, you know, it's curvy. I mean, all through the billboards and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really curvy and really tight. So does that mean the road is just going to be like a few feet of shoulder is going to be added, or are those curves, any of those curves, going to be straightened out?
They're looking at the possibility of straightening some curves. They looked at doing traffic calming, and doing traffic calming by breaking it up and putting roundabouts in between, so people had to come down to a slower movement. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the purpose. So working in the right-of-way and traffic, there are some tools in slowing down the traffic as part of that. It does not make that the selectmen in Albany. I get daily texts when there's an accident there, an intersection.
Right.
So we have to look at all that. 150 where 153 comes back in. That's a separate project. Where Coleman's is a separate project, and we're trying to locate other money, safety money, how to realign that intersection, especially.
By 113 with Coleman's?
By 113,
Yeah.
yes.
But just so I understand it, so all the curves, from a total layman's perspective, all those curves through Albany, are they going to be?
The majority have to stay in place because we do not have the right of way.
So it's just widening the shoulders at that point.
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on from roads. You're running for state senate. What are your priorities?
No sales and income tax. Our state's been frugal, always has been. We're not like our New England neighbors. It's not so much that we have an income problem. It's always been a spending problem. So that's a high priority to me, to make sure that doesn't happen. Live within our means. Roads, safe roads and bridges. I believe in parental rights. I believe in all types of schooling.
Now, did you vote against the Medicaid expansion when you were a rep?
I have voted against and I have voted for. So
well, that covers the bases.
Well, there are many bills that come in that you have to read completely through. I was against just taking a full expansion without any accountability. So I didn't vote the first time around. But when we pared that down to that every 7 years we will take a look at that and accept it and move forward, which is where I came in and agreed with the process. I didn't want an open end. We've closed it down. It's in the budget, and of course I'm in favor of it. But
Okay.
it's like any other expense.
Because right now, where I was going with that, because I know your opposition's Bill March. I mean, that's one of the things they're targeting about the Medicaid expansion, and you want to fill Senator Jeb Bradley's seat, and that was, he was state senator for whatever 16, 18 years, but that was literally his signature accomplishment that he looks at, that Medicaid expansion thing. I mean, it saved hospitals a lot of money for care, and obviously I think there's like 50,000 people in the state that now have insurance through Medicaid. What do you think about, and I know, and I guess it's related to this, but what do you, in fact, I just watched the debate between Preston and Russell Prescott and Chris Pappas. And Russell voted against it, and he said, the Medicaid expansion, and he said that he wanted a work requirement with it. And do you know anything about, does that make any sense to you?
When Russell was there was a requirement that if you were if you opened up registration to more people, that if they had the ability to work, that they had to. It wasn't a major thing on my radar, but that was when he was there, I believe, in the Senate.
So, and then the other thing, I'm just going through my head of what the things the bill is, Marsh, attacking you with, and certainly abortion and women's health issues is one. So you voted. So I guess one thing is, what do you think? What's the appetite do you think the legislature has for changing what we have, which was 24 weeks?
Sure.
So that's question number one. And then you voted. You voted for some of the more stricter restrictions, like 15 weeks? Is that true?
Yeah.
So how do you talk about that? Your stance on that?
I'd love to talk about that because it's totally misrepresented. So. Something real quick with myself. Carol and I tried for 10 plus years to have children, couldn't have children. My mother-in-law and my wife thought maybe it was Mark's problem, so we went and had a procedure done for Mark, and that still didn't work. We went to IVF twice with no insurance possibility of it because we wanted this to happen. Unfortunately, it didn't work for us. So for me, with all of these years in my family upbringing, pro-life is where I was, and I am. But when we started voting on it, the heartbeat bill, and X number of weeks, being less than 6 months, I was in favor of that, and I voted for that. Same as Dr. Marsh did also, who doesn't want to say it, but he'd also voted for the same bill. What I've come to learn in all of my years in the legislature and running into people and speaking to women all the time, that's not acceptable for our state. So I have changed, and I have not voted for the lesser amounts. I have voted for 6 months,
which is 24 weeks.
Which is 24 weeks,
right.
But I think 6 months kind of drives it further home. And I've promised that if I'm lucky enough to go to the Senate, I will not move from that position. I think that's reasonable. I believe we have 41 states with that standard, and I'm hopeful. There are exceptions for conditions and things that could happen, but I'm hopeful that that decision can be made by the woman, and hopefully the father and the physician, that they should come to that understanding in that time.
All right, so that clarifies that. This is your own ad. So Mike DiGregorio says, please protect our children and vote for you. So what does that mean, please? What does that mean to you, please protect our children?
I think Mike, and I've known Mike several years, and he's a good, honest man, and I love the work he's doing with the school board. It's not something I would ever want to undertake. I think he's talking about parental rights is what he's talking about. I think parents should be consulted on things that are going on in school, and I believe that's what he's addressing.
I mean, not to get in, I personally, I just think the transgender issue, and we could talk 20 minutes on transgender and the Kearsarge thing, but it affects so few people. I mean, literally, 99.9% of anybody in New Hampshire, we go about our daily lives. That's what it is. But we interviewed Anita Burrows and Maureen Blanchard, who's the Republican who's running for that district too. And we got caught up in this whole parental rights thing because first she's against it, the transgender, and then, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I asked whether, is it a parental right? Do you give, since Republicans want the parental rights with school issues, that teachers should tell if blah, 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 is it a parental right issue to be able to determine whether you want your child to go through transgender treatment when they're under 18 versus the state mandating that you can or you cannot? Does that make any sense? So I guess I'm asking you, in a nutshell, without getting into this big debate about the transgender, how do you feel about whether that's a parental issue for kids under 18 or whether the state should basically not allow parents to treat their kids under 18?
I'm a firm believer in the family. Everything I do, family comes first. And I believe that the schools, I don't want the schools holding back from the parents what's going on. I will acknowledge, I'm sure there are some parents that will not handle the situation correctly. But you know, the family needs to be involved, and to hold back that information is wrong.
That's
I
on the
just,
school side, but
yeah.
I'm talking about actual treatment. I mean, I think there's has been some
Oh, okay.
legislation of whether the state could not allow parents, I mean, just regular parents, if they go to the doctor, they get a kid, they want to blah, 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 start treatment, whether that's a parental decision for kids under 18 or whether the state should have the ability to intercede.
I think it's a family decision. The parents need to be there, and I don't think the state should be stepping in ahead of them. There's so many things under, 14, 15, 16 years old, 18 years old, that life seems, and for some is overbearing. But to permit a decision that changes a child that they may not ever come back from, I don't think that's correct. And I think, the parent needs to be there for that process.
Okay, good. And the another one of your, because you have endorsements here basically, and this one's from Pat Farley in Tamworth, and it says New Hampshire's at a crossroads and needs capable, dependable leadership, blah, blah, blah. What do you think, what does it mean to you that New Hampshire is at a crossroads? Like, I don't think we're at a crossroads. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Pat Farley's a wonderful woman who's done so much work in the town of Tamworth with community development and so forth. I think possibly she's speaking economically. Everything we do, whether it's funding education, all depends on a vibrant economy. And she might be referring to a sales and income tax and property tax and so forth. And that's I believe she's speaking from an economic position. We had a forum down in Ossipee in Tamworth a couple months ago. George Cleveland, loved George Cleveland.
Yeah.
He's such a good guy. And
even though he's a Democrat.
he's a wonderful man. Yeah. Even though he's a Democrat. He has held that forum for years, and he started out. Let's go right there, Mark. Sales and income tax. How you feel? And the way we were lined up, it was Republicans and Democrats, and Republicans come right across and say no sales and income tax. And then starting with every Democrat after that, they would certainly consider that and thought that was a funding source. That's a real difference, and I think for business owners, lowering the business taxes and so forth is important, and our state has thrived, from that. So I think Pat Farley was
All right. So
speaking
speaking of taxes, the interest and dividends tax is set to expire. The budget is going to be tough. Everybody knows the budget's going to be tough for the next session because we're running out of COVID money and all that. And then the interest and dividends tax, which is only paid for people who earn interest and dividends, over I think it's $2,400. So generally, I think it's fair to say it's for wealthier people. I mean, lots of people don't have any interest in dividends, right? So, and it's set to expire. That's going to put $160 million hole in the budget. I think Joyce Craig is saying that she would reinstitute it at a higher threshold. What do you think about the interest and dividends tax?
I like the direction it's going. I like
eliminate it.
Eliminate it. We have until this quarter been just enjoying more and more income coming into the state, and I'm a firm believer when you drop taxes and you drop business taxes, business grows. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, and then there is going to be a budget crunch with the Sununu Center, and that's another whole center topic. That could be hundreds of millions of dollars. Where do you think the budget's going to go next session? And we have to cut something. Where would the cuts be? I guess that's the question.
I think your analysis that it could be hundreds of millions of dollars is correct. They thought it was going to cap at 120 million. The latest number I saw is that it could rise as high as $500 million. Not 50 billion or 40 billion that my opponent has spoken of, but it looks to be somewhere in that. And it's a terrible situation. We need to address it. There's a system set up to take care of that. So where are we going to find the money? It's like every other process. It starts in the House. The House looks at where we are with the revenue and makes their adjustment. And we've always, in all my time in the House, we've always been looking to the Senate, or as we like the other side of the wall, and they have always had the pleasure or the opportunity to have an extra quarter to decide where that goes. Where do I think that money's going to come from? I don't know right now, but my fear is, if you, as my opponent says, that if we need a sales and income tax. My fear is that if you generate that money, most of the time it never goes where it needs to go. And depending on who's got the corner office, we start adding programs, and the initial cause just never gets taken care of.
All right, so we're switching gears here because we're already closing in on, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes to go.
Are you serious? Wow.
No, it goes quickly. On the education freedom accounts, I assume you support those.
I do.
Okay, so as a taxpayer, one could say, look, I'm already paying to the local public schools. I'm already paying to the charter schools like we have down here, the Northern Woodland Charter. So why am I paying for a parent to send their kid to another school, particularly that those schools that they're sending them to have tuitions of $20,000, $30,000. I mean, it's not free, right? It's not like, so if the idea is that we're trying to help low-income people basically send their kids to a private school or religious school, but the tuition of those schools are, is a lot. How and the stake is $5,200 from the state. It just doesn't make sense to me how $5,200 is going to help a poor family send their kid to a $30,000 tuition school. The point is, most of that's money is already going to families who are sending their kids to those schools. And my final thing, is that, now it started off budgeted, in a few $100,000, and now it's getting into the tens of millions of dollars. So
20 million.
20 million. So it ain't hayseed.
No, I totally agree. So we all as taxpayers are paying for the school system. The school system works well. My children all came through public school. I came through public school. I'm a product of that, even though my 5th grade teacher, Miss Siki, said that Mark will never amount to a damn thing, growing up.
And you remember that.
You always remember. You remember the people that brought you up, and you remember the people that made you work harder. So the threshold right now, I think, is 300% of the poverty rate. So that's a working couple of $120,000. That's not an awful lot of money for. It's better than many, but that's the threshold. So the school system's not working for them now, and I think they have a right to find that system that works for them. And we are looking, I believe, a $200 million surplus right now. So I feel it's the right choice. If we weren't talking that, and I know it's a different subject, but with school choice, with charter schools, and with homeschooling, all great opportunities, because not all children, are educated the same way.
Sure. Okay. This is sort of my last question, actually.
And come on, we can go longer.
Well, I've got a few more.
No, that's correct.
No, I do have a good. I want to finish with my closer question.
Okay.
But one of the discussions, I'm looking at my notes here, was on, and we had a feisty discussion debate with Anita and Maureen, and it was quite illuminating. But it was a total divergence of understanding of what's happening at the border. Maureen said there were 1,400 contacts with illegal immigrants coming through the sector, blah, blah, blah. Anita said none. I mean, zero, And I don't know if it was because our border, New Hampshire border, is only 58 miles in Canada, and maybe the sector includes other states. What's your understanding of that?
I believe Anita is misguided on that. The governor has been for more enforcement at the northern border. We probably don't know how many are coming through. We have whole sections of woodlands up there that we have no radio communication whatsoever. There's no cell service or anything else. It's real. It's not zero. Anita had some legislation talking about she referred to it as if I'm hiking through the woods and I'm stopped and I shouldn't be stopped. There's a difference between a New Hampshire resident working through and someone coming in. It will become a huge burden to the state the more people that we come in, and quite frankly, if they're not coming in the legal way as my wife's family did, then I don't think it's right.
But do you think, I mean, Governor Sununu sent some National Guard up there, I guess, and $1.5 million. Critics say it was just a publicity stunt. I mean, I think anecdotally, if there were a lot of illegals coming through into Colebrook and Groveton and, Balsams up there with Les Otten, we'd hear about that. I mean, I don't think I guess I'm asking, do you know a number?
I don't know a number, but
is there a number?
I don't know that. I'm a roads and bridges guy, and that's where I spend my time.
Yeah.
When you go to the Senate, you now have to be qualified in 4 areas. I can assure you, those people aren't coming through and going in to get a cup of coffee in Colebrook or anything else. I'm certain, and I've heard that those people are picked up and autoed out of there and taken other places.
We only got 2 minutes to go, believe it or not. So politically, you're very conservative, right? I mean, that's obvious based on all that. But, and so for the 5 undecided voters out there, I think most people, either you vote all Democrats or all Republican, right? But in the fact that you're the local guy, how do you convince a undecided voter, define that person as that, to say, wait a minute, I really don't agree with Mark on abortion or whatever, but he's my local guy who fixes the roads and will, give me good constituent service. So how do you balance that constituent service to us locals versus your obligations as a state senator, and how would you convince that voter to vote for you?
I have survived 9 terms in the House. 7 of those terms I represented 3 towns. And I was redistricted and I had different towns. But those towns are almost always split 50-50. 50 Republican, 50 Democrat, and the independents are a third of that, but it usually breaks out to be 50-50. And I could not have been in office all of those years unless I found the way to appeal and be with people down the middle. I've done it in Concord in my committee. It doesn't matter. We do. I like to say there's not a political bone in there because roads don't know a Democrat or a Republican. Mm-hmm. So I have always had that ability to work with people, and I'll continue to do that. That's Jeb Bradley's legacy. That's how he's been there for so long. Jeb's been a great mentor for me for years and years, and when he came forward and asked me to do this, I can't tell you how happy I was.
Mark, it's been a pleasure, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you, sir.